Okay, so it's 19 past. We're supposed to start at 20 past, but I'll start by saying thank you everyone for choosing this talk. We will be talking about design systems, so obviously. But yeah, thank you for choosing this over the other conferences. It's going to be a short one. We're going to try to keep it 15 minutes, but there's time afterwards. You can grab us and ask any questions you may have. So, as you might have already guessed, our presentation focuses on our experience with the Workable's design system, where we are currently working, and how we explore areas like development workflows and environments for better productivity and experience. But before we start, we wanted to start with small intros. So my name is Avra Alevropoulou, and I'm a principal product designer at Workable. And before that, I was very fortunate to gain a lot of experience with creating design systems for multiple companies with different touch points, in-car, mobile, web, and complex stakeholders like Skoda Automotive, Business Finland, and many more. And when I joined the company 2 years ago, I had two main responsibilities. The first was to lead the Workable's new product, expanding the company's offering beyond recruiting, and also lead the design system and design ops together with the engineering team.
And I'm Stelios Kamnakis. I'm a software engineer at Workable's platform team. I'm primarily involved in developing the design system, and I'm also involved in areas like enhancing the front-end infrastructure, such as bundling, package management, among other things.
So, as we all know, in the product creation space, things have changed dramatically, and they have gotten a lot faster, especially after the pandemic. You know, remember that time where we had waterfall and we would release 3 to 4 times a year? Now we're way faster, releasing multiple times a month, multiple times a week, or even a day. And the available knowledge and tools and libraries out there have also gotten a lot better. And for that reason, we actually had to keep up with our game at the design system team and improve our processes and resources available, especially when we had to deliver a whole new product in a year. So we actually had to save a lot of time to achieve that. So when I joined Workable, at first, I was really impressed with the design system maturity. In a lot of my past experience with design systems, the main struggle was to engage engineers with the system and convincing them to actually use the resources that we were providing. They wanted to have more freedom to actually create their own stuff instead of following guidelines and components, right? But at Workable, it was quite the opposite. Everything was a component, and front-end engineers kind of refused to create custom components that us designers would create unless it was part of the library. But to gain better sense in terms of where we were at with our design system operations, we decided to run a survey to get feedback from our engineering team in terms of like what we wanted to be doing as our roadmap for the next year. And we found out that actually people love it. It saves them a lot of burden, and they want to participate and contribute themselves. So I guess we were doing something right at the time. But as I was analyzing the results and getting my hands dirty, I started realizing that things were not as idyllic as they seemed, but rather chaotic. So for this presentation, we decided to play a little game we play sometimes. It's called 2 Truths and a Lie, about our design system practices and development workflows applied, and how we came to address them over the past year. So let's take a look. Number 1. Sustaining alignment between design system components and developed libraries demands constant attention. When the design system started, it was easy to have full control because there were few components, few screens, few engineers. But as the team and the product was growing, things started to get a bit messy. Namings were very different from Figma. The library structure was completely different. Implemented components and designs were not one-to-one aligned. So as you guess, you know, like the product that was released was not exactly identical with the mock screens we would produce. And there were also a lot of, you know, with these discrepancies that we had, it started increasing a lot the implementation times for our engineers, but also for designers to accept the developed features. So the majority of our engineering team during our survey mentioned that they can't even find what is supported by the design systems when they view mocks and what functionality of the component is actually supported. So what did we actually do about this? First of all, we renamed our design components to make them more discoverable. We added an EG prefix in the design, which stands for Evergreen, which is the name of our design system. And this way, our engineers always know which components directly exist in the design system and that they're actually fully supported. We linked our Figma component with the respective component pages in the documentation portal for better discoverability. We completely aligned the developed components with the variants available in Figma so that the design components would have the same properties outlined in the documentation portal. We also optimized for 8-pixel baseline for primarily OCD purposes, which is actually a very common practice, and we have optimized line heights in typography and component height to achieve that. And finally, we revamped entirely our color palette to optimize for better naming conventions and accessibility, and to actually meet our accessibility standards finally. And we also introduced theming in our library that was only used by developers and not designers in the past. So basically, designers would inspect designs and they would see different color namings that we actually had in the developed environment. So design and development alignment is an ongoing process, and we keep improving and enhancing. And to do that, we actually dedicate a lot of time that eventually decreases production times. Number 2, the creation of design system documentation demands significant investment, but as we all have seen in the past, in the end of the day, no one really uses it because they want to just do their own stuff. Also, we have seen in other major players like Atlassian that in the design system teams, they actually start reducing the documentation that they have in their websites. So as we mentioned before, the survey showed us that it was clear that our team faced a lot of challenges with the old documentation. It was hard to find components and their properties, and they were unclear, and there weren't enough usage examples to help people understand how to use them. And well, that was kind of fair because like what we were really providing in our documentation portal was literally the component in display, and no one would actually make sense out of it. They would just see the component there. So what did we do again to overcome all of these challenges? We decided to revamp entirely our documentation portal and make it much more accessible to everyone, including both developers, designers, and project managers in order to understand better what we need to support better.
So this new platform would allow them to interact with components and understand their functionality in depth while becoming a reliable source of information that everyone can understand and rely on. But let's take a quick look at a concise breakdown of our process to achieve that. Firstly, we improved the structure of our documentation to make it easier finding components. Then we documented the API of every component in the design system to help developers understand their supported features and how to use them. Next, we provided detailed descriptions and guidelines, as well as additional useful resources for developers, such as import paths, code snippets, and package dependencies. And finally, we introduced sections to accommodate possible edge cases for each component. This way, we provide visibility for developers while hiding noise from the main documentation architecture. And the results? The positive feedback from our team and the fewer support requests because people could actually find what they needed on their own. So indeed, bringing the documentation to the desired state requires a lot of effort. But on the long run, it provides great visibility of the design system and is especially useful for newer team members. So moving on to the third and the last statement of this presentation. New tools introduced by the ever-evolving world of front-end engineering present solutions to challenges, but adoption is not straightforward. New tools like TypeScript, Storybook, Vite, Ban are popping up all the time, each with its own set of advantages. Now, while these advancements are exciting, integrating them can be particularly challenging, especially when dealing with large, well-established code bases, such as Workables. Now, our development stack has been around for a while, and while it serves us well, there are always newer tools and methodologies that can offer additional advantages. This poses the question, should we stay within our comfort zone using what we're accustomed to, or will we go the extra mile and strategically integrate these new tools with our existing stack to harness their potential benefits effectively? Now, in our case, the end goal was improving developer experience and boosting productivity. And trying to achieve those things, we had to face two main hurdles. visibility and time efficiency. So starting with visibility, imagine for a second that you're building a house, but you can't find the bricks, and the floor plan is a complete mess. That's almost what it was like for our developers using our design system. To tackle this issue, we decided to reintroduce the already mentioned Storybook into our workflow. Storybook is a tool that we're referring to as a documentation portal throughout this presentation. For those unfamiliar, Storybook is a tool that allows developers to showcase components in isolation and provides a visual library for UI development. The great thing about it is that it allows you to customize it and expand it through the provided add-on API. And so we did. We utilized it to create internal add-ons tailored for our own Ninja goals. For example, one of those internal add-ons enabled us to reduce noise by hiding development stories that were crucial to the library's maintainers, but irrelevant to everybody else. And it also allowed us to develop the groundwork in order to easily provide useful resources for developers, such as import paths and package dependencies. Now, though mature, Storybook is constantly updating, and with us stuck in a very old version, many migration challenges arise. One of those included rewriting all the existing stories that were using deprecated APIs to align with the new component story format. This required a lot of manual effort, but it was essential for ensuring compatibility and future-proofing our documentation. And finally, to ensure compatibility and reliability with our screenshot testing suite, which leverages Storybook, we had to replace a deprecated add-on with a custom implementation powered by Jest. This move not only allowed us to maintain a robust testing environment, but would also allow for more optimizations to take hold later on. Now, from a developer's perspective, knowing there's a place where you can find all the information you need is one thing. Not having to constantly revisit it, though, greatly enhances productivity. And TypeScript is a great tool to help with that. It helps developers understand code structure without leaving their editor, and if they make a mistake, it makes sure to let them know very quickly. IDEs, which are the code editors, work extremely well with TypeScript, as they highlight errors, they suggest available properties, and to go a bit further, it helps all those brand new AI copilots understand your code and provide suggestions or solutions. At Workable, we already use TypeScript heavily, but as you might have guessed, the design system being the building blocks of our product was introduced a long time ago, and back then TypeScript was not as popular as it is now. So we configured our environments to partially support TypeScript, so we don't have to rewrite the whole library, and we created declaration files for each component in the design system. Now, although this also required a lot of manual effort, it allowed us to leverage all the benefits TypeScript brings to the table while keeping the actual code as is. Plus, new components can be written directly in TypeScript, and today we have lots of those, while older ones can be rewritten, but at our own pace. Now, moving on, in a developer's workflow, reducing time spent waiting for tests to run and the CI to complete is crucial for maximizing efficiency, especially in an expanding code base. So recognizing the need for optimization, we decided to make our development environments more efficient. Firstly, we addressed installation times by replacing Yarn with PMPM as our package manager. This change saw installation times drop from 30 minutes to just around 5 minutes, providing an immediate boost to our development workflow. Next, we transitioned from Jenkins to GitHub Actions, and we revamped our screenshot testing suite by replacing Puppeteer in favor of Playwright. This transition enhanced the speed of our testing suite, but also made it more reliable, as flaky tests reduced, and so did the reruns of the suite. And finally, we implemented sharding techniques to divide our most extensive testing suite into smaller parallel executions. This optimization not only reduces the overall testing time, but is also a solution that scales as our code base does. And just a quick comparison, early 2022, a developer, upon creating a pull request of any sort, would have to wait at least 1.5 hours before he could eventually merge it. Today, and after all the changes we mentioned, it takes just around 20 minutes, which is basically the average review time. So to wrap this section up, indeed, new tools can offer solutions to various challenges, and when dealing with large, well-established code bases, the integration is definitely not straightforward.
So to sum up what we have said throughout these 15 minutes that you have offered us, we completely aligned design and development. We documented everything well and efficiently. We worked on our processes and tooling, aiming to have more consistency and more accessibility in our product, boost our productivity in the end of the day, and improve the product creation experience for our entire team. Thank you. Any questions? No. Cool.
How long did this take?
That was our work for the past year, basically.
How many people working on this?
So we have 2 engineers and a lead at the design system team, and I was the designer from the design perspective. But at the same time, we were doing this transition, but at the same time, like supporting the entire product team with other requests, components, optimizations, and so on. So it was not just focusing on this transition itself.
This is fantastic work, by the way. So 2 questions. Sorry. Number 1, how did you make the business case for this? Did the business decide that the design system needed to happen, and then you said, okay, we'll do it, or did you have to persuade? That's question number 1. Question number 2, trickier. It's all lovely on the JavaScript world, but what about your older code base? What about the stuff you have on, I guess, Ruby or whatever else? What happens if somebody needs to create a server-side component? Can the design system give him the dumb HTML, or how does that work?
Should I start with the first one? Or, so actually, we're lucky enough, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we didn't really have to make a business case now to create a design system. The design system already existed, and it was like very efficient at the time I joined, like 2 years ago. The problem was because we were handing over a lot of the things between like designers coming and going and all of that, at least in the design perspective, there were quite a lot of inconsistencies. And also that happened with the design system team as well. Like at some point it fully existed, and then we paused the function of the team for a while, and then we started over. So we had to update and keep up with the requirements at the time.
So you need a team for this?
From my experience entirely, you need a dedicated team to actually spend the time to actually optimize these processes. Otherwise, it's stacking a lot of legacy stuff that you can't really keep up with because it's no one's full responsibility and ownership to do so because everyone's contributing. I mean, there are these kind of like contribution models that it's not centralized, but it's hybrid or other different models. But I think in the end of the day, you need accountability and ownership to actually proceed with bigger decisions when it comes to that and consistency across the design. And I'll leave the technical part to you because I have no idea.
Can you please repeat the question?
So the question was, on the TypeScript, you have this amazing storybook thing. I can go in and I can figure out exactly how to use the danger button. But this is like on the TypeScript JavaScript world. What happens if I'm managing a very old part of your stack, some server-side thing written in Java or Ruby, and I need to just throw some HTML? Do I have the option to just copy? Did you make it available, just the dumb HTML, or is your design system have the full component?
No. Our design system is integrated in specific aspects of the product, so the legacy ones that do not support the evergreen design system.
So all those lovely EG components are for the new stuff?
Yeah, but that's almost the whole product. There are few legacy aspects of the front end in our product.
Continuously revamping anyway. So we're trying to transition, now that we revamped the, let's say, color palette, we had to go to legacy areas and actually start changing the colors there as well. Yeah.
So the design system team is also maintaining the storybook, creating the plugins, your custom things you've done. Or this is implemented from the design system team, or is another team working on the storybook?
From the design system team.
You mentioned that the throughput is less because there is friction between more work to be done between developers and designers.
Mm-hmm.
So your output has dropped a bit. Do you think that eventually this will be back the original levels?
I didn't quite get, what do you mean by output?
The production output. You mentioned in the first part that you didn't produce as because there was more back and forth between the developers and the design team?
I was taking more time to actually inspect and
Yeah.
actually deliver.
Yeah,
But
delivery was slower.
yeah, but why would it increase?
What do you mean?
I thought that was the question. You said it was gonna go back to
You
it.
said that the delivery times now are slower, a bit slower.
No, they were back in the day, but now that we optimized our processes and how you even inspect and find the component in our library, then it reduces a lot the back and forth. But also that the fact that we actually optimize in terms of one-to-one look, let's say, of the components and functionality, so that you don't have to go back and forth. And you see the properties in Figma, you say, this is a tertiary button with an icon left, blah, blah, blah. And it's exactly the same properties in Storybook, so that developers can actually just copy-paste the properties they see in inspection from the Storybook.
Hi, two questions. The first one is, how did you manage to, for the design team, when you introduced a new design system, to actually use it and, not detach the components or make it worse? And the second one is, if you have any future steps to make the design system more bulletproof, to change and safeguard all this hard work you did.
So first of all, we didn't actually replace the design system. We worked on the existing design system and kept optimizing. So, for example, we would take one by one the components, and on those components we would change the properties and optimize line heights and paddings and colors and all of that, especially so that the designs wouldn't break everywhere, which took a bit of effort to make sure that, because also Figma has changed a lot in a sense that, now we have auto layouts, and the whole way we are working with design layouts is not like a frame and then you throw something on top and hope that it's pixel perfect. Now it's more like development, right? So in order to achieve that, we actually had to break bits and bobs, but the majority of the component would actually be the same, and then optimize inside that, so that, because our product is pretty vast at the moment, so breaking all the design would be a nightmare. So we prioritize not breaking things. And then there was another
The second
question.
one had to do with the future. I mean, what's the roadmap from now on about bulletproofing and safeguarding all this work? And if you have any specific things that you haven't already done and you look forward to implement or fix or enhance on the processes, on the file, whatever.
So you mean in terms of design or development as well?
Both.
Both. Okay, I'll start with design. So we have a few items in our roadmap. And first of all, it's an ongoing process. There is still more optimization to come, more alignment, more better properties and fixing components so that it would accommodate. It's an alive organism, right? New things are constantly coming anyway, and things are becoming deprecated and old and legacy, let's say. So we're trying to replace these. But also there's a lot of work we still need to do in terms of optimize, for example, icons. We haven't touched that because now we had a lot of contributors. We had a sort of database tool with a lot of icons you bring in. But now we are in this phase that it's kind of inconsistent, so we need to bring it to optimize that, but also optimize it for the Storybook, because now we don't have icon library in our Storybook, for example, to actually be able to, pull an icon, and you need to sort of upload it.
And people should actually have to search in the code base to find the icons.
Yeah, so still, and then the last thing about design, the design part, was that we want to make the components more prototype ready, so that our designers, when they prototype and test things, they wouldn't have to actually link hover states and stuff, so to make it more responsive in that sense.
And in terms of development, we want to keep a common language between attributes that when a developer implements something, it's common in the other components as well, so they don't have like separate attributes for the same thing. And I'm also...
Actually, we're about to run our survey for this year, the one that we mentioned in the beginning that gave us a lot of feedback of how not idyllic everything was. So now we're in this phase that we're redefining our roadmap as well, on top of like the stuff that we're continuously doing.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone.